Welcome to Focus on Why. I'm Amy Rowlandson, your host. Join me to explore the compelling stories, profound insights, and captivating experiences shared by my guests from all over the world. Focusing on the importance of why, these relatable, uplifting, and inspiring conversations will empower, motivate, and guide you to create your own purposeful way of life. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why. Before we dive in, let me share how I can transform your journey as a purpose coach. I specialize in helping you get crystal clear on your why, aligning your passion with your purpose, and crafting a plan to create the life you truly desire. Book a free 30-minute coaching call today. The link is in the show notes. Let's start building your purposeful future together. Today on Focus on Why, I am joined by Ben Stewart. Ben, hello.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Yes, well, thank you to Kim Huggins for the introduction. I love it when people reach out and say, "Oh, you must speak with this person because," and that's for you to share what it is about. So let's dive in, Ben. What is it that you're focusing on at the moment?
So at the minute, I'm in the sort of the aftermath of an amazing challenge, and we're creating a documentary that's going to be coming out in the next few months, I suppose, without putting too much of a strict time frame on how I became the first person ever to walk up and down Mount Kilimanjaro walking backwards. It's going to be a long old process from the training and getting out to Kilimanjaro, but the documentary is hopefully just going to package all of this story together. Ultimately, what I'm going to be sharing a lot with you today and putting it in hopefully some amazing sort of video footage as well as some podcast form, which I'm really excited to share with you now.
So what's been harder, the actual challenge itself or the documentary documenting the challenge?
Yeah, what an amazing question, because really, in hindsight, it's probably more about this sort of post uh, post challenge effects that's happened, because I've never done anything on this scale before. This isn't my first backwards challenge, but ultimately, the organization, firstly, to take me and the team out to Tanzania, the preparation, the training, that all went really smoothly. So I'm a personal trainer by trade. So the fitness and the well-being side of it to prepare myself to do the challenge really wasn't the problem that I had organizing. I think you're right. The more challenging thing, the new thing that I have experienced was um, that the aftermath, the organizing of the videographer, getting the bits together, the sorting out. It's a totally new world for me.
Okay, here's the question. Obviously, the listener's probably thinking, sorry, did you say backwards? Yes, you did. Tell us more.
Yeah. So this, as I said, this is not my first challenge. So back in 2019, I started on, I guess, the idea of doing an annual fundraising challenge. Part of my business, I wanted to put some onus on myself to become fitter, healthier, train for a period of time. But more importantly, do something unique, get some interest into fundraising. I think it's fair to say there's an awful lot of fundraising fatigue. There's people running 5Ks, half marathons, and crazier things almost every week now, and asking money for their amazing achievements. I wanted to try and put myself in a small group of people that have maybe never done anything before, so a totally unique uh, achievement. And it started by me walking up Mount Snowdon in Wales, by walking backwards. There was a few people in the past that had gone to the summit, but once again, I was going to be the first person to do that up and back down backwards. And then this led on to a 30-mile backwards hike. The three peak challenge was the toughest one before Kilimanjaro. Um, and ultimately, yeah, what's more than three peaks? What's harder than three peaks? It took a long time of researching and diving into what is physically doable. Things like Everest is well off the cards. There's a few mountain passes out in the Alps that are really, really challenging. You need specialist climbing equipment. After a few chats and talking to people, I realized that actually Kilimanjaro is just a really long walk. And if I can walk it backwards and if people can walk it forwards, I really feel like I can walk it backwards. So with the training over doing it for 8 days rather than 30 hours was my three peaks, it set me up to the biggest challenge so far.
And the actual physicality of backwards motion, As a PT, I'm sure there are some benefits, maybe?
Yeah, there is benefits. It's probably one of the smaller percentage of benefits to do. It's a really uh, focused benefit that you'd get. So things like your ankles and your knees are going to get a really interesting workout. And I say interesting from the health and well-being perspective. If you struggle with any kind of knee pain in around your kneecap, without diagnosing people via a podcast, it's really good to do some loaded backwards walking. For the most part, with what I was doing, it's not very healthy over that sort of period of time. But the training for it, I've now never had knee problems while running after these challenges. My ankles and calves are incredibly strong. And it's a very focused way. In the industry, we have this term called the specific adaptation to the imposed demands. It's basically a posh way of saying we get good at what we practice. If you want to get good at walking backwards, do lots of backwards walking. Most ordinary people aren't training to do something backwards in their day to day. The park runs down on a Saturday morning. Train by running forwards and get fitter in the gym by training your legs and your fitness that way. However, the small people that are out there and that I program with my rehabilitation side, some backwards work, and it is really really good for people. It is backwards. It's opposite. So your muscles are working in a different way to what they ordinarily do. So injuries almost unravel themselves in a better way because you are moving backwards.
And other than it being a unique way of fundraising, is there a metaphor about backwards for you? Does it mean something else?
Yeah, I suppose for me, it goes back to a long way. Although I started the fundraising in 2019, I I really wanted to do something for a long time beforehand. I've always been into the fitness, the well-being side of it. But when I was well, I suppose back at secondary school, the the thing that I realized now I look back is I was pretty much a average kid. I wasn't sporty, I wasn't overly intelligent. I passed all my GCSEs and A levels, but it was all very average. I wasn't really a standout performer anywhere. And I think with that, into my later teens, into my early 20s, I struggled to kind of find myself. And when I took on my self-employed business, working with clients, it kind of allowed me to look at myself a little bit more. And this is something where I've taken a lot of life lessons from kind of the input and I guess the exposure to Stoicism and philosophy. And while I'm sort of out there on these mountains, there's a lot of really good Stoic lessons that I kind of pull on an awful lot. There's things like Kilimanjaro. I couldn't do a preparation walk. I couldn't go out and suss out the place. I literally just had to adjust as we're going. And I think as I've grown up and grown into the man I am now, kind of pulling and leaning on these Stoic lessons that I've learned over that time has helped. Things like, you can't control what happens, just how you react is just something really important out on the mountain. There's times I was getting frustrated because it was tough, because it was challenging. But knowing that I can just stop and take a breath and calm my frustrations down, it led me on to kind of being able to say, frustration doesn't help here. So definitely control the one thing I can control, and that's how I'm going to react. If it takes me 5 hours to walk up this little ascent, it takes me 5 hours. I'm not racing up to the summit. There is a world record. There is already a few guys that have Kilimanjaro summit records. And there was never a chance. I was never going out there with that in mind. It was all about the fundraising efforts to become the first person up and back down. But getting to some of the really challenging sections was leaning on to a lot of these lessons that I'd learned as a younger person to get me going. And that's what I lean on with a lot of my clients as well. It's a lot of people I feel like don't know themselves. And if I knew that when I'm tired and worn out and hungry and fatigued on a mountain at 3,000 meters above sea level, I definitely need to have sort of control on my emotions. And I don't think a lot of people can have that ability, do have that ability. And that's something not just fitness and rehabilitation, but help people with on their day to day to, you know, falling off the bandwagon with my diet a little bit at the weekend and it's almost a spiral out of control. And like, you got the control to grab hold of that moment and stop that spiral if you wanted to. Um, and people can, and people learn that they have more control about how they react than what they feel.
I've got so many questions, Ben. Firstly, is there a point where you could identify where you did find yourself? You said you struggled to find yourself, or has that been something you've built on?
I think it's always a building on. I don't think there's ever a moment where I would ever say to you, I've turned around and now I know how I am, because who I am tomorrow and next year and in 5 years' time will be a very different version of how I am now. So it's always learning, it's always progressing. And I think that's another really important thing is the team of people I took out to Kilimanjaro is almost another little stoic lesson that I've learned over the years. Was handpicked four. Well, my brother-in-law was there. That was the closest relation. There was a friend that's been there for all the other challenges, and there was effectively two coaches. And there were people that I know, but ultimately asked to come along with me to give me the level-headed. It's leaning on people that can help. You can never achieve everything on your own, and if you can lean on um, the right people, the right personalities, the right skills to make whatever you're trying to do a total success. And that can be in your personal life and business, walking up mountains backwards. It really can be helped. And there was evenings where having a good laugh at my expense, because I just wandered off with one of these coaches and had a little bit of a chat about how I was feeling, because it is overwhelming. The first the first day I got there, and you could see the summit from our hotel. And I said to this guy, why me? How am I the only person in the world that's ever going to walk up and down this mountain backwards starting tomorrow? It's like, it's not about you. It's not about this whole challenge. It's about the bigger thing that we're setting out here to show that you can do this. You're not special. You're a guy doing a thing that's going to happen for the first time. And by having that little moment of, yeah, I'm just a guy here from the UK that's going out and doing what I felt like was a once in a lifetime thing, I've now realized there's another chap that's looking to beat the world record after my attempts. There's two people that had already been to the summit before me. Although I'm in really good company, it was it felt far bigger than me, and that felt quite overwhelming. But just having that leveling experience of someone just telling me it's just another walk, it's just another thing that you're doing to raise money, raise awareness, challenge yourself, and that's really going to lead on to the bigger picture. So yeah, it's even just in those moments, I'm realizing that I'm learning lessons before I've even started the walk about myself. So to kind of answer your question once again, it's always going to be that learning over long, long periods of time.
And how did you get introduced to Stoicism?
It was initially for a YouTube channel. So I probably spend far too much hours on YouTube. I'm not a TV watcher, but it's within the fitness world. A lot of my recommended videos are people that are the best way to do this, or how to conquer motivation and to stay disciplined. And I think that's just kind of led me down the line of Stoicism, and then naturally picking up some of the more popular books. The Daily Stoic being one of my favorites that I've probably read through twice overall now. And it's a holiday read that, yeah, I know we're on the same page with this, aren't we? It's a really, really a good book. And I've tried to recommend this book to so many people since me going through it. And I feel like another kind of one of those little stoic lessons of it's not suitable for everyone until they find their connection to it. And I think that's one of those, just because I'm seeing loads of benefits into reading some of these amazing lessons from long times ago, it doesn't mean it's going to be beneficial for everyone. And I think sometimes repackaging it in the way the Daily Stoic does, it puts a modern spin on some of these lessons. It helps it become a little bit more digestible. But I would have said that was only in the last maybe 8 years, maybe a little bit less, that I've really kind of dabbled into that idea. And then Ryan Holiday being the main kind of, he was the author of the Daily Stoic, and he does a lot more content around his TED Talks and a lot of his other speeches that he puts out there. So For the most part, I feel like I've only really touching the surface with Stoicism. And then as I talk to more and more people, it still blows my mind how so many people don't know about Stoicism and perhaps hear the word philosophy and go, oh, scary word. It's all deep meanings and second thoughts. And actually, I think when you have a relation to it or a relationship to it, some of these lessons you can take to heart, it sits and reflects. And that was one thing I do an awful lot is read the Daily Stoic 2 or 3 pages at a time and sit and write some notes. How is that to me on this day? And I might pick some of the uh, categories that it puts it out. Oh, I need a bit of sort of self-love at the minute. I need to understand how to appreciate my self-esteem a little bit better. I feel a bit rubbish about myself. Go into some of those lessons for a few days. And it just helps kind of realign some of these thoughts that we can modern day life can eat us up if we're not careful, and just kind of leveling that out can be really good.
And that leveling, you've just mentioned it again, and your coach helped you to have this leveling experience when you felt the overwhelm or the questioning why you. Explain to me, you mentioned the bigger picture. What is
Hmm.
the bigger picture for you?
Well, I suppose with Kilimanjaro and the Three Peaks for that matter, it came to the fundraising side of it. We're raising money for the British Heart Foundation. At its core, I lost my granddad to a heart attack. He was of the age and the lifestyle where it was pretty much kind of leading down the line of health problems. So it wasn't a horrible shock, but it's still one of these things. And certainly being in contact with the British Heart Foundation more and more since, hearing some of the stories that people go through, the health conditions people live with, and then there's an extension of that. Some of my clients, I deal with people week to week that I'm managing their life, and if they overdo something or they're not enough sleep or too much stress, they're feeling maybe low level symptoms or the risk of worrying strokes and heart attacks are higher. So the the core of me doing these things was to take the step back away from my busy 9 to 5, so to speak, and put myself into that bigger picture, raising money for the bigger picture. And with that, it allows me to go in the harder times. This isn't about me. This is about that challenge, as I said, and it allows the perspective to shift away from, as you just mentioned there, the overwhelm, the challenge that we take one day at a time on this mountain, and each step is just its next challenge. And it doesn't matter what's tomorrow or what the day after that brings, because there was some challenging sections that we were forward planning for. But day one is day one, and step one and step two is only then followed by 3 and 4, and that's all we're taking.
If you had the opportunity, Ben, to go back to the average kid in secondary school, of which there are thousands and thousands across the country, across the world, who are thinking right now, they're not sporty, they're not intelligent, they're not a standout performer. And yet there's opportunities for them to be the first or the unique version of themselves in whatever they choose. What is the message that you would like to share with them now?
It's a really good thing. So I thought about this long and hard, because reflecting back on literally just how you've described that there, of me becoming the first person and looking back over 15 years and realizing, oh, I've changed so much. But I'd go one step further, and it's not about the secondary school kids that are, the average. It's everyone. People can be of all ages, um, maybe, yeah, sort of slogging through life, wanting more for themselves. And I think that's the I think that's the idea that goes back to a Marcus Aurelius quote. And I came a little bit pre-prepared with a couple of these. Um, you could do good today, instead we choose tomorrow. And I think just taking that first step, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be the best, the fastest, the furthest, the hardest. If you progressing yourself is something that's totally new for you, but might seem so basic for so many people, don't compare. I think that was where I was certainly at back in secondary school and college. And as I started to find myself, I found my personal training service was quite unique and specific to people. I really wanted it to be personal training. And I'm sure there's lots of trainers out there that do the same thing. But for me, being average and comparing myself to the football team or the rugby team and wanting to be with them, that was me at a 16-year-old kid going, comparing every single day. I want to be smarter. I want to be better. I want to be more. And as soon as I stopped looking to compare and to start looking inward and what can I do a little bit better, if it's not tomorrow, it's going to be today. And I really just made that first step. It's same with running, same with the gym workouts and your diet. It doesn't have to be perfect, just little bits of improvements, and that compounded effect over a year. All of a sudden you're so much better in a year's time. And that can be something like a stoic perspective. It can be a fitness thing. It can be a new business venture. Whatever it might be, it's always going to get that step progress that we always want in.
So when people come to you, Ben, and they are looking for your guidance as a PT, do they know that they're going to get all of this mental fitness sorted as well?
I use a bit of a pyramid scale, so to speak, the good, better, best. And I guess it leads on quite nicely with what we just spoke about there. The, the easy world of high information, uh, access to YouTube and social media and even books and courses out there, a lot of people strive to be the best. And that's amazing without necessarily having the good foundations in place. So this is something we talk about, maybe onboarding a new client. They'll be prepared for the whole package. However, the fundamentals of Stoicism and philosophy isn't day one, lesson one, sit down and pay attention. Sometimes it is just let's get 8 hours of sleep first of all. Let's get the good habits in place before we can start to build onto that. But I think as an overall thing, I think it's only beneficial for me to be offering some of these lessons, some of these struggles that I've been on myself, and to guide clients when they're struggling with whatever they're struggling with. I can lean on, yeah, I totally relate. I can sort of sympathize, empathize with where you're at in terms of going, love to lose 8 stone, 10 stone in weight, and so much to go. What's the point in starting? And sometimes it is just understanding you need to start and to get that ball rolling. So many people are doing things that they just don't need to do. So they're drowning out the noise, focusing on a few more specific things. And from there on, we can build up that pyramid into the better habits and then hopefully sooner rather than later into those best case scenarios.
It's very similar, the work that I do with coaching clients, in terms of, if you are not looking at what your core needs are and meeting them, then how can you possibly expect to do anything else? Sleep being one of those core needs, and then exercise or movement for sure, but also what you're putting into your body in terms of, you've just touched on the information, but water and the fuel, the food, all of these core elements are critical. And you've also spoken about self-love, self-esteem. You talked about imperfection, and in terms of comparison and procrastination and all of those elements. So much is built around the core needs and accepting and giving yourself this self-appraisal of what is actually the reality, instead of avoiding facing reality.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's very easy to distract yourself with non-essentials, and it it leans on to another quote, and it's just asking yourself, how essential is it? Because if we can focus on fewer things better, then the ball rolling, the habits, those fundamentals we're talking about, the core needs that we're talking about, we are all human. For the most part, it's a copy and paste recommendation. Drink more water, sleep a little bit longer, understand that exercise and well-being shouldn't be a chore, it should be a benefit, it should be an essential part of people's week, but not prioritizing these things and distracting themselves with longer hours at work or uh, time, distracting ourselves on the social medias. It could be that we we lose ourselves. And I really am a sort of a big advocate of getting the few things right to lead on to the better things. So say the better things. I am a big advocate for getting a few things better. And then in time, there is no right. It's that life lesson that we're just slowly improving. And say, looking back on where I've come over the last 10 years, I'd never have told myself 10 years ago, you're going to become the first person to walk up Kilimanjaro backwards. It's things we can achieve that are far out of our imagination right now suddenly become doable and more appealing because we are progressing little bits at a time.
And that compound effect that you mentioned earlier, and also just the taking each step of action, you've coupled that with the reflection. You clearly are, as you said, you're looking at some of the daily Stoic recommendations and then thinking about how that applies to your own life. Let's dive into that a little bit deeper and talk about purpose and your purpose and how you feel that shapes your decision making.
I think purpose is a really good word for people to understand as well as use because the low energy, the demotivated mindset that we can fall in sometimes is sometimes a lack of purpose. We may be stuck in a job we're not enjoying. And what is the purpose? I find it quite easy to find purpose. I get up to go to work that I really enjoy, and people find it very beneficial, the help and advice and the guidance that I give them every day. I go home 6 days a week from work, fulfilled, knowing that I'm helping people. That isn't always an easy thing for everyone to link to, relate to. But I think sometimes that purpose can be more simple than um, I'm enjoying X or Y. It can be the fundamentals, these cores again. But I think getting the cores right and having that purpose of getting up and benefiting myself can be a good thing. Now, I want to couple this maybe with a two-sided double-edged sword that a lot of people put the pressure on themselves again, and it's this kind of to and froing all the time of not expecting too much too soon, but we do need to start. And that quote that we've just used, it could be today, but we always use tomorrow, is we need to get the ball rolling. We need to get started. And then being patient. It's not a quick fix with these things. But purpose for me, was always a case of what can I do to make one person's day better? And whether that's through my social media channels or whether it's just one person at work in the gym, it's quite easy for me to find that. And I started pushing that. Can I communicate and benefit one new person, not just a client, not just someone I'm familiar with, someone out and about in a coffee shop or to and from the gym where I train. So it's it's an interesting thing. You can find your own purpose in ways that aren't getting up and doing a charitable endeavor or training for something specific or focusing on a personal goal. It can just be, it's not about you, it's the bigger picture, leaning on people. You said about the team earlier on, but how can I make someone's day a bit better today and challenge yourself to do that once a fortnight, even to start off with. It can be small steps that people can find their purpose like that. And that's how I started. To reflect was difficult for me personally. To look inward seemed quite scary to begin with, so I always then reflected on how I provided my service. That was always quite a good thing. I wanted to offer a benefit and an improvement to someone's life. So to reflect onto a session in the gym and say, did I do this? Yes. What could I have done better? What will I do different? Can be something that I would write down regularly for the 5 or 6 sessions that I do every single day. And then that slowly kind of worked their way down to maybe doing it mentally to and from work or over a coffee in the morning, to then actually sitting down and thinking, how do I feel? And that journaling kind of world that I know some people touch into. How do I feel? What's my mood like today? What do you attribute your mood to? Are you hungry, tired? Do you need some exercise? Do you need some rest? Do you need some time off? Is there anything you feel like you need that you're not giving yourself? Um, and I think when you understand there's the package there of I could do with some more exercise, I could do with more sleep, or I could do with rest, some more water, maybe a little bit less alcohol. Like you can kind of start being really honest with yourself to make the first steps into doing whatever your goal is.
And that's really key, that element that you just touched on, the being honest, because it's so easy to lie to ourselves, to sort of tell ourselves these uh, comfortable lies rather than facing uncomfortable truths.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's one of the hardest things. As I say, I really struggled with the self reflection, and maybe uh, for that reason, I almost wanted to try and kid myself. And then when the ball got rolling with the fitness and the well-being, the challenges, I couldn't hide. I'm going to walk 30 miles backwards. Are you training, Ben? Yeah, I am. I have to reflect hard because I'm telling my world that I'm doing this amazing challenge and I'm going to try and raise some money in the process. If I'm going to make that a success, I have to do the thing I'm going to set out to do. And I'm fortunate enough to know how to do it. Do people want to But do people avoid telling people the white? Sorry. Do people avoid telling other people the hard truths and therefore don't want to put that on themselves? And then vice versa. Can you tell yourself those hard truths and get that ball rolling and say, well, if I don't like this about me, there's only one person that's going to change that. I don't like that I'm getting out of shape, or I don't like that I'm doing too much of this that's having a negative impact on me. Change it. it it's it makes it seem so black and white, but I really am a hard believer of if you want something, you can do it. It's not going to change overnight. It's that compounding effect that we've gone back to again. But if you want to do something, you want to lose weight, it is your decisions that you can make.
And you've spoken. I'm just looking back at some of my notes here, and we've talked about what we can and what we can't control, about involving other people in collaboration. Don't do this alone. You've just spoken about change, and that in itself is often what stops most people, is that it's easier to stay with what is, even though that's uncomfortable, than to go to an unknown space.
I think I think you're right. One of the I suppose one true phobia I have, and I'm still a very young man, is time and the idea of getting old and not so much wasting time. I do sit at home and put my feet up and enjoy some relaxation like anyone, but I really want to value the amount of time that I have on this earth, which is totally finite. We have no idea. And without wanting to make this take a bit of a morbid turn, we don't know when our last day is going to be. And I can say, hand on my heart, if I was to die within the next however long that might be, what I've done in the recent years, I'm incredibly proud of, and I've done a good thing for people, for myself, and therefore I'm fulfilled. I have that purpose. And that was one of the first things for me, was realizing that when we can put a clock on our life, we only have a period of time in our younger years that we have all the energy in the world to go and travel if that's what you want to do, to go and take part in some amazing things. And of course, as we get older, that doesn't stop. But I think when the realization of life is so short, we realize that's when we take it so much more seriously. So there's this quote that I think kind of works really, really well with this. And it's, we have two lives, and the second begins when we realize we only have one. And it stays, and that's really stayed too so deep within my life, because I want to make sure I'm getting up and helping people. I want to make sure I'm benefiting myself. I want to make sure that my life is fulfilling, is purposeful, and therefore that knock-on effect of, I suppose, what I find quite easy to exercise and eat well and uh, aspire to do these unique challenges that Kilimanjaro was um, so far out of what I imagined I'd ever do, but I think has compounded in only recent years from 2019 through to now 2024. It's such a short period of time that I've grown so much quicker there. And I think in the last 5 years, 6 years, with the discovery of this philosophy and Stoic mindset, we we progress so much quicker than we can imagine, and therefore really would want to encourage and inspire people to just get out and take that first step in whatever they want to do.
Well, I absolutely hear you. And I am sure that this particular podcast episode will inspire people to take just that one step, because it has been so beautifully articulated by not only what you have shared here, but what you're doing. And you really are, walking the walk and talking the talk and doing both. So absolutely amazing, Ben. And what's next? What's the next challenge? I know you're in the aftermath, and that does sound like a big challenge right now, but is there another project in the pipeline?
There's ideas, I suppose, is the way I'm thinking about it. We're letting the dust settle from this one. It's still relatively early stages after the challenge. Um, and it's difficult to say that I wasn't at Kilimanjaro airport on the flight home thinking what could be next, and getting very carried away with myself really quickly. I certainly think that the next challenge won't be, um, let's call it bigger, whatever that is. I think it will be bigger for different reasons. And sort of what we just touched on there is I really want to make sure I can get people involved in my next one. So instead of stretching further and further abroad and higher peaks, I'm going to try and find a challenge or challenges that might just help people kind of be able to tag along, to get involved in however they see fit. That isn't just me asking them to donate or to sponsor or to support in whatever way they're able to do, actually to get involved. And when they say, oh wow, I can't believe you did the 3 peak challenge walking backwards. I'm going to go out and walk Snowdon for the first time, because if you can do it backwards, I feel like I've got to be able to do it forwards as well. And please be careful when you go out to the peaks. But if you have that idea, it is an amazing place. The outdoors, we're so lucky here in the UK to places like the Peak District, the Lake District, Snowdonia. It it's amazing. It is absolutely stunning, and there are some amazing trails, not overly difficult ones, but these peaks have always interested me on getting to the highest point in whatever country it might be. I think Everest is definitely off the cards, but we'll see. We'll see. Never say never.
It's interesting, Ben. When you just said there about getting involved and that you want it to be a bigger, kind of a bigger movement in essence. I was collecting my daughter from with my husband from Amsterdam, and we were running the park run, and I'm a massive fan now of park running. I only started last December, and I've done 20 so far, so it's been quite a lot since then. We're recording this in June, so that's been pretty much every weekend. What my daughter turned around and said to me was that she said this is one of the best things that's come out of the UK, this park run movement, because it's something that involves community, and because it's something that is free, and but it's also working on so many different levels. It is such a powerful element that is purposeful. It has this incredible connection, and as I said, a community there. It's so portable and easy to set up. And I'm just wondering if what it is that you've got will bring in the life lessons and bring in something that could be as simple as something like that.
I think you're absolutely right. And that's, I certainly don't think I'm going to be a competition for parkrun, because it is amazing. But in that context, as you say, the getting out into groups of people, everyone's encouraging someone else, the free exercise, getting into local areas. There's there's 3 here in my local town, and it's amazing where some people are, I didn't even know there was a 5 kilometer loop around that park. And people are finding green spaces that are in and around their local area for the first time. And I think, like you say, you can get the super fast, speedy runners that are going off and timing themselves and competing. And you can get the people that are there doing their first ever run walk challenge, training from, that couch to 5K thoughts into 5K park runs. And you're just benefiting yourself. You're part of that community, you're inspiring others, and probably seeing, you know, someone behind you is looking at you going, I can't wait to be able to do that. And you're there looking ahead of you going, I can't wait to do that. And everyone's in their own little part of their train, inspiring whoever's looking up to them. And I think it is amazing. And that's hopefully where I'm going to lead on to, doing a little bit more within the local communities and see where that takes it.
Well, I really wish you all the best. It is super, super exciting to hear. And I can't wait for the documentary as well. So I'll make sure that when that comes out, it's shared again with your episode. So do keep that, keep me informed on that. Ben, how could people reach out and follow your work, connect with you, ask you questions? What's the best way for them to do that?
Probably the best way is Instagram. So that will be BS Fitness Therapy. I am on LinkedIn, although I, I don't use it as much, so it's been a little bit more challenging to reach out to there. But I am on there, and I certainly do get the notifications pushed through, so you can find me on LinkedIn as well. Um, but for the most part, Instagram is the best bet for me.
Fabulous. Well, details are in the show notes. Ben, thank you for sharing why you walk backwards and why you've walked backwards up and down Mount Kilimanjaro and taken an incredible team with you. Choosing those people wisely is always important, to surround yourselves with supportive people who will help and challenge you as well. So it's great. It's a great message, even in that itself. So thank you so much for sharing your purpose with us today. Have you got some final words of inspiration?
I don't know. I've dropped a few sort of Confucius quotes already and Marcus already. So, what I would want to say to all the listeners is please don't be scared of philosophy and Stoicism. It's not as deep and as complicated as a lot of people think it might be, and you'll always find something relatable. Start off, easy things to digest from philosophy, and see how you get on from there. It will be incredibly inspiring. You'll realize a lot of these people were writing lessons and quotes around difficult times in history. So that comparison to where your difficult time in your life probably is more relatable than you think.
What value have you gained from tuning in to Focus on Why today? What are your reflections with actions? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or via LinkedIn and share how Focus on Why has made a difference to you. Your feedback not only will inspire others, but will help them to discover how Focus on Why has created powerful ripple effects. Let's continue the conversation. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook or X, join the Focus on Why Facebook group, and sign up for my weekly newsletter, Friday Focus, to keep in touch. All the links are in the show notes. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why.